The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt Shanghai cast a brilliant light, making the suit I was wearing feel like something foreign and expensive. It didn't belong to me, much like this luxurious hall. My name is Li Wei, an architect who, just 3 months ago, was still measuring dusty construction sites. Now, I was sitting in the third row at the Architect of the Year Awards gala. My heart was pounding in my chest, not from excitement, but from a vague sense of anxiety. My wife, Wang Li, sat beside me, her hand cold as ice when I took it. She looked stunning in a deep red evening gown, the one I had spent nearly my entire first project salary to buy for her. "Relax," she whispered, the smile on her lips not quite reaching her eyes. "Everything will be fine." I tried to believe her. Bamboo Garden Serenity, the brainchild I had spent 2 sleepless years on, sacrificing everything to complete, was one of the 3 final nominees. It wasn't just a building, it was my soul, a fusion of cold concrete and the wu-wei philosophy of Laozi, a dream I had sketched since I was a boy in a poor countryside village. Wang Li and her brother Wang Hao had established the Wangsheng Company to bring this project to life. I was just an unnamed chief architect because they said someone with no reputation like me would struggle to convince investors. "We're all family," Wang Li had said. "The company's success is your success." He believed her, blindly. The host walked onto the stage. My heart felt like it would leap out of my chest. All surrounding sounds faded, leaving only a buzzing in my ears. And the most prestigious award, Breakthrough Architectural Project of the Year, goes to Bamboo Garden Serenity by Wangsheng Design Company. The room erupted in applause. Wang Li squeezed my hand, pulling me to my feet. "We did it," she cheered. But she wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed on the stage, where her brother, Wang Hao, was adjusting his Armani tie, a smug smile on his face. "And now, please welcome the chief architect, the mastermind behind this masterpiece, the man who breathes soul into every line of the structure. Please welcome Mr. Wang Hao." The host's voice struck me like a hammer blow. "What? Wang Hao?" I turned to Wang Li, searching for an explanation, for any sign that this was a terrible mistake, but there was none. Her face was perfectly calm. She let go of my hand, as gently as brushing away a speck of dust. "He deserves it, don't you think?" she said, her voice as cold as ice. My entire world collapsed in that single moment. Wang Hao strode onto the stage, accepting the crystal trophy amidst thunderous applause. He began his acceptance speech, talking about his vision, his sleepless nights, about the design philosophy he had nurtured. He was speaking the very words I had confided in Wang Li during late nights, as I sketched my wildest ideas onto paper. He was stealing my soul, right before my eyes, and the world was cheering him for it. I looked down at my hands, at the calluses from holding a pencil, the small scars from careless moments on site. They were the silent witnesses to the truth. Everyone around me was standing and applauding. Only I remained seated, stunned, like a ghost at a feast. The spotlight shone on Wang Hao, but all I could see was my own reflection in Wang Li's empty eyes. She knew. She had known all along. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. I wasn't her husband, not her partner. I was just a tool, a stepping stone for her family's ascent. When I was no longer useful, they cast me aside without a second thought. The blood in my veins turned to ice. The feeling wasn't anger, but a terrifying emptiness. I had given this woman everything, my talent, my dreams, my future, and my heart. And she had taken it all, crushed it, and handed it to her brother as a gift. The applause continued, but to me, it was the sound of my world shattering. I stood up, staggered out of the ballroom, leaving behind the laughter, the lights, and the greatest betrayal of my life. I didn't know where I was going. My feet carried me aimlessly through the brightly lit streets of Shanghai. The lavish party behind me felt like another world. I walked past the Bund, looking at the skyscrapers I had once dreamed of contributing to. Now they seemed to be mocking my foolishness. The phone in my pocket buzzed incessantly. Wang Li. I ignored it. I needed to confront her, but not now. I needed air, a moment for my numb brain to start working again. Near midnight, I took a taxi back to the high-end apartment we called home. The apartment was in Wang Li's name, a gift from her parents when we married. "I want you to have a place worthy of your talent," she had said. Now I understood. It was never my home. It was just a gilded cage. When I put the key in the lock, I found it had been changed. A cold chill ran down my spine. I rang the doorbell, frantically. A few minutes later, the door opened. It wasn't Wang Li. It was Wang Hao, still holding the crystal trophy, a conceited look on his face. "Well, If it isn't Architect Lee, he sneered. Looking for someone? Where's Lee? Why has the lock been changed? I tried to keep my voice steady. Lee is tired. She doesn't want to see you, he said, leaning against the doorframe blocking my way. As for the lock, this is my family's home. We have the right to change it. Your family? This is my and Lee's home. My voice began to tremble with rage. Just then, Wang Li appeared behind him, wearing a silk robe. The theatrical expression from the party was gone, replaced by cold contempt. Li Wei, she said, stop making a scene. It's over. Over? What are you talking about? Bamboo Garden Serenity is mine. Every drawing, every idea was mine. Wang Hao let out a harsh laugh. Yours? What proof do you have? All the documents, all the copyrights are registered in my name. You were just an employee hired to do technical drawings. You should be grateful you were even allowed to participate in such a prestigious project. Their shamelessness left me speechless. I looked at Wang Li, hoping for one last shred of conscience. Li, tell me this isn't true. She looked at me, her eyes as distant as if I were a stranger on the street. Hao is right. You should know your place. Where do you come from anyway? You're nothing more than a country bumpkin. Did you really think you deserved any of this? You should thank my family for giving you the chance to set foot in Shanghai. Her every word was a knife in my heart. The love, the respect, the promises, all lies. My things, I managed to whisper. Ah, that, Wang Li gestured with her chin toward a few cardboard boxes by the door. There are only a few things of yours, old clothes and some worthless books. Take them and go. And don't ever show your face to me again. I looked at the boxes. My entire life for the past 3 years in this city was packed inside them. My beloved drafting table, the architectural models I'd stayed up all night to build, the notebooks filled with ideas, all gone. They had taken everything, not just my work, but my past and my identity. You won't get away with this, I ground out through clenched teeth. Wang Hao took a step forward, his face close to mine. Get away with it? What are you going to do? Sue us? With what? Your empty words? Remember this, Li Wei, in Shanghai, without money and power, you're just an ant. I can crush you anytime I want. He was right. I had nothing. I had placed my entire trust in them, never keeping any legal documents for myself. I had been too naive. The door slammed shut in my face, locking away everything I once had. I stood there, in the cold hallway, with a few cardboard boxes containing the broken pieces of my life. The November drizzle of Shanghai began to fall, cold and merciless, just like the hearts of people. The Shanghai night swallowed me whole. I dragged the soulless cardboard boxes to a nearby bus stop and slumped onto the cold bench. The rain grew heavier, soaking through the expensive suit, which now looked ridiculous and pathetic. I opened one of the boxes, hoping to find something familiar, a little warmth from the past. But inside were only a few old, worn-out clothes and some professional books. They hadn't even bothered to return my valuable personal items. They had completely and utterly erased my existence. The next morning I tried calling the lawyer the company had once hired. I'm sorry, Mr. Li, the secretary's voice was cold. Attorney Zhang is busy handling matters for the Wangsheng company. Furthermore, your contract with the company has been terminated. We cannot represent you. I tried to access the company's server, where all my original design files were stored. Access denied. My account had been deleted. I checked the joint bank account my wife and I shared. Balance, 0. Wang Li had withdrawn everything. For the next few days, I lived like a ghost. I rented a cheap, damp room in a slum on the outskirts of the city. The room was just big enough for a bed and reeked of mildew and despair. Every day, I wandered online, reading articles praising the architectural genius Wang Hao. They published photos of him standing next to the model of Bamboo Garden Serenity, explaining my design philosophy in a clumsy and hollow way. The irony was, no one noticed. The world only saw the surface, the name engraved on the golden trophy. I tried contacting a few old colleagues who had worked with me on the project. Most of them avoided me or gave vague answers. I'm not sure, Wei. Everything at the company is decided by Mr. Wang. I realized they were afraid of losing their jobs. In this fiercely competitive city, the truth was less important than a stable job. One closer friend called me back, his voice worried. Wei, where are you? Wang Hao sent an email to the entire company, saying you were fired for incompetence and attempting to steal designs. He said he forgave you and wouldn't press charges, but he forbade anyone from contacting you. Another blow. They hadn't just stolen my work, they had destroyed my reputation. They had turned me from the victim into the thief. Now I understood why no architectural firm had replied to my job applications. The name Li Wei had become a stain in the industry. Despair consumed me. I sat in the dark rental room, staring out the window at the Shanghai skyscrapers glittering like distant diamonds. I had come here with nothing but a heart full of dreams. Now I was left with nothing again, but my heart was shattered into 100 pieces. I thought about giving up, going back to my hometown, and burying the name Li Wei and my dream of being an architect forever. Shanghai was too big, too cold. The Wang family was too powerful. I was just a pawn in their game. One evening, while eating instant noodles, I saw an interview with Wang Li on television. She sat there, beautiful and elegant, next to her genius brother. The host asked about her role in the company's success. Wang Li smiled, a smile I had once adored. "I'm just the one supporting my brother from behind the scenes," she said with false modesty. "But I also want to say to all the young people pursuing their dreams, always believe in your talent, but also know how to choose the right people to walk with. Sometimes, misplaced trust can destroy everything." The remote control shattered as I threw it against the wall. She dared to say those words. She was using my own story to preach morality. A surge of anger erupted, burning away the despair. I couldn't give up. I couldn't let them gloat over my pain. I couldn't let them continue to deceive the world. Even if I was alone, even if I had nothing left, I had to fight back. Not to reclaim what I had lost, but to demand honor and truth. At that moment, a name flashed in my mind, a final hope. Master Chen. Master Chen lived in a quiet little alley in the old quarter, a world completely opposite to the glitz of modern Shanghai. His house was an old courtyard-style home, with a small yard full of bamboo and a tranquil koi pond. The air here seemed to flow more slowly. Master Chen had been my professor at university, a retired, venerable architect who had the greatest influence on my design philosophy. He was the one who taught me that architecture wasn't just about building spaces, but about creating a sanctuary for the soul. I stood before his old wooden door, hesitating. It had been 2 years since I last contacted him. After marrying Wang Li, I had been swept up in the whirlwind of work and her family's social circles, gradually distancing myself from old teachers and friends. I felt ashamed. Finally, I summoned the courage to knock. The door creaked open. Master Chen stood there, his hair silver, his eyes as sharp as ever. He looked me up and down, showing no surprise. "Come in, Wei," he said in his deep, warm voice. "I've made tea." It was as if he knew I would come. I stepped inside, and the familiar smell of old wood and ink made my nose tingle. We sat at the tea table in the courtyard. He poured me a cup of hot Teguanyin tea. The steam rose, carrying with it a strange sense of peace. "I've heard what happened," he said after a moment of silence. "The architectural circle in Shanghai is large, but also very small." I lowered my head, not knowing where to begin. All words seemed meaningless in the face of such immense pain. "Do you see the fish in the pond?" he suddenly asked, pointing to the small pond. A brilliant red koi was swimming lazily. It was once bitten by a larger fish, its fin nearly torn off. It hid under a rock for weeks, not daring to swim out. I thought it was going to die. I looked at the fish. Its fin had a faint scar, but it still swam with grace and pride. But then one day, it swam out on its own, Master Chen continued. It swam slower, more carefully, but it swam. The wound didn't kill it, it made it stronger. He looked directly into my eyes. "You are not Bamboo Garden Serenity, Wei. That project is only a part of you, not the whole of you. The Wang family can steal the drawings, the design files, even the trophy, but there is one thing they can never steal." "What is that, Master?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "The mind that conceived it, the hands that drew it, and the heart that was poured into it," he said, his voice firm. "They can copy the form, but they can never copy the soul. Your talent is still inside you. The question is, will you let it drown under a rock?" Master Chen's words were like a cool stream poured onto my parched soul. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had been so focused on what I had lost that I had forgotten the most precious thing I still had, myself. I told him everything about the betrayal, the destroyed reputation, about having no legal proof. He listened intently, then nodded. "Legal proof may be difficult," he admitted, "but there is a kind of proof that is even more powerful. It is the proof of the creative process. Do you still have anything left? Hand-drawn sketches, idea notes, anything from the earliest stages?" My mind raced. They had taken everything from the apartment, wiped the computer data. I thought I had nothing left. But then, a faint memory sparked. a memory of my early days in Shanghai when I didn't even have a laptop. I had drawn. I had drawn so much, in cheap sketchbooks. I had written down every thought, every fleeting idea. When my small rental room became too cluttered, what had I done with them? I had packed them into a wooden crate, carefully sending them back home to my parents, telling them to keep it safe for me. "This is my initial capital," I had told my mother. I had completely forgotten about their existence. I looked up at Master Chen, my eyes shining. "Master, I think I might." Master Chen smiled, a kind yet knowing smile. "Well then, what are you still sitting here for? Go home, Wei. Go find your capital." The high-speed train carried me away from Shanghai, leaving the skyscrapers and painful memories behind. The closer I got to my hometown, the greener and more idyllic the scenery became. The air no longer smelled of smog and competition, but of damp earth and young rice. This was where I was born and raised, the place that had nurtured my first dreams. My parents had aged considerably. They met me at the small town station, their eyes filled with worry. They had heard rumors through relatives in Shanghai, but they didn't ask much. My mother silently cooked me a hearty home-cooked meal, the dishes I had craved for so many years. The simple meal was warmer than any lavish banquet I had ever attended. "It's good that you're back," my father said, patting my shoulder. "Stay home for a while and rest." That night I climbed up to the old attic. The air was thick with the smell of wood and the dust of time. Under the dim yellow light, I found the oak crate, sitting humbly in a corner, covered in a thick layer of dust. My heart pounded as I pried open the lid. Inside, carefully wrapped in oil paper, were them. More than 10 sketchbooks, the paper yellowed with age, but the pencil and ink lines were still clear. I tremblingly picked one up. It was the first sketchbook from when I had just arrived in Shanghai. I turned each page, and a world of memories flooded back. There it was. The first rough scribbles of a living space that integrated with nature. Notes on the philosophy of following nature in architecture. Experiments with using light and shadow to create a sense of tranquility. I could see the evolution of my thinking, from fragmented, naive ideas to more detailed sketches of structure and materials. And then, I found it, a special chapter titled Bamboo Grove Dream. This was the precursor to Bamboo Garden Serenity. I had drawn it even before I met Wang Li, before the Wangsheng Company even existed. The first page was clearly dated, the 15th of March, 4 years ago. I flipped faster. Here was the first master plan drawing, very different from the final version, but its soul was there. The structure revolving around a central courtyard, the glass walls to blur the boundary between inside and out, and the use of bamboo as a key feature. I even found notes about debates with myself, discarded ideas, solutions found after many sleepless nights. These were not just drawings. This was my creative journal. This was undeniable proof of my intellectual labor, something no plagiarist could ever fabricate. Wang Hao could copy the final result, but he could never replicate this journey. In these notebooks, I didn't just see lines and numbers. I saw my sweat, my tears, and my burning passion. I sat on the dusty attic floor, hugging the stack of notebooks, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not tears of sorrow or despair, but tears of finding myself again. They had stolen my project, but they had missed its roots. They had cut down the tree, but the seed was still here, in my hands. The next morning, I said goodbye to my parents. "I have to go back to Shanghai," I said, my voice full of determination. My mother was worried, but my father just looked into my eyes and nodded. "Go, son. Take back what belongs to you." I placed the stack of sketchbooks in a backpack, as carefully as if I were carrying a treasure. As the train left the station, I was no longer the defeated and lost Li Wei. I was Li Wei, an architect, and I was bringing my weapon back to the battlefield. The battle might not be over, but I knew one thing for sure: I would not lose. Returning to Shanghai, I no longer went to the damp rental room. Master Chen had cleared out a small studio for me in his house. "This place needs a bit of youthful energy," he said, handing me the key. The room overlooked the bamboo courtyard, quiet and full of inspiration. It was the complete opposite of the glitzy glass office of the Wangsheng Company, but here, I felt freer than ever. I spent days digitizing all the sketchbooks. Every page, every stroke, every note was scanned at the highest resolution, carefully saved on multiple hard drives and cloud services. This was my insurance, my ammunition for the coming war. "You have the proof," Master Chen said after reviewing the scans, "but presenting it now would lead to a costly and uncertain legal battle. The Wang family has money and connections. They will distort the truth. You need something else. You need to prove to the world who the real architect island. He told me about a small project an old friend of his was struggling with. It was a community library in an old working-class neighborhood with an extremely tight budget and a challenging construction site. A small, irregular plot of land wedged between two old buildings. Many architects had turned it down, deeming it too difficult and not prestigious enough. They need an architect, not a name, Master Chen said. They need someone who can turn the impossible into the possible. Do you want to try? This was the chance I needed. A project not for money or fame, but for people. I accepted immediately. I threw myself into the work with unprecedented energy. All the pain, the resentment, and the newly kindled hope, I poured it all into this design. I was no longer bound by the extravagant demands of wealthy clients or the pressure to create a flashy icon. I was free to create. I named the project the Library of Light. The core idea was to bring natural light into a cramped space. I designed a system of clever skylights and glass brick walls, creating a warm and light-filled reading space, despite being squeezed between two dark buildings. To save costs, I used locally sourced recycled materials, turning what seemed like waste into unique architectural details. The soul of the design lay not in expensive materials, but in the intelligence and subtlety of each solution. Master Chen observed my work, occasionally offering valuable advice. He taught me not just about architecture, but about patience and vision. A masterpiece is not created in a hurry way, he said. It is nurtured by time and a tranquil soul. While I worked in silence, the Wang family was at the height of their fame. Bamboo Garden Serenity had helped them secure many lucrative contracts. Wang Hao became a star in the architectural world, constantly appearing in magazines and on television shows. Occasionally I would see pictures of him and Wang Li online, hand in hand at lavish events. The pain still pricked, but it no longer consumed me. It had transformed into a different kind of fire, the fire of determination. 6 months passed. The Library of Light was completed. It was a small, humble building compared to the grandeur of Bamboo Garden Serenity. But when the neighborhood children rushed in, their eyes lighting up at the light-filled space, when the elderly found a quiet corner to read the newspaper, I knew I had created something more valuable than any award. I had created a living space, a place that connected people. Standing in my second creation, I felt like a phoenix reborn from the ashes of betrayal. I had lost everything, but in that loss, I had rediscovered the true essence of architecture and found myself again. And now, I was ready. I had a new masterpiece in my hands, a living testament to my talent. It was time for the world to know the truth. The Library of Light, though small, created an unexpected buzz in the local community. People spread the word about a warm and intelligent public space built on a minimal budget. A few architectural bloggers visited and wrote glowing reviews. But these were still just small ripples in a vast ocean of information. We needed a storm. Master Chen used his connections. He sent the project portfolio, including stunning photographs taken by a photographer friend of his, to Global Architecture, one of the world's most prestigious and discerning architectural magazines, based in London. He made no mention of my story or the scandal with Bamboo Garden Serenity. He simply let the work speak for itself. 2 weeks later, I received an email from the magazine's editor-in-chief. They didn't just want to feature the Library of Light. They wanted to dedicate a cover story to it in their next issue, with the headline, The Rebirth of Humanist Architecture, When Light Transcends Space. They were particularly impressed with my design, philosophy, and innovative solutions. They wanted an in-depth interview with the chief architect. My name, Li Wei, would appear for the first time in an international publication. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, Wang Hao was drunk on victory. After the success of Bamboo Garden Serenity, he had won the bid for a massive project, the Prosperity Financial and Commercial Center, a new symbol of the city's wealth. The press praised him endlessly, calling him the Le Corbusier of the East. But cracks began to appear. The first concept drawings for the Prosperity Project were leaked. Professionals in the field began to whisper. The design looked flashy and expensive, but it was hollow and lacked depth. It seemed like a clumsy patchwork of other famous buildings from around the world, with no coherent philosophy, none of the distinctive soul that had made Bamboo Garden Serenity a success. Discerning people began to ask questions. How could an architect create such a refined masterpiece, and then immediately produce something so mediocre? Right at that moment, the new issue of Global Architecture was released worldwide. The article about the Library of Light and architect Li Wei caused a real shock. International experts praised the unique design style, the subtlety in handling space and light, and the profound humanist philosophy. They noticed a striking similarity in the design soul between the Library of Light and Bamboo Garden. Serenity, a consistency and creative thinking that Wang Hao's prosperity project completely lacked. The ripples of doubt began to grow. Online architecture forums exploded. People placed the two projects side by side, Bamboo Garden Serenity and the Library of Light. They analyzed the similarities in design language, in the use of materials, in spatial philosophy. Then they looked at the design for prosperity and saw a world of difference. Who is Li Wei? This question began to spread. Why had such a talented architect never been heard of before? Why did his style so uncannily resemble Wang Hao's debut project? A famous architecture critic wrote a blog post with a provocative title, "Two Projects, One Soul. What is the truth behind Wangsheng?" My phone started ringing. Journalists, other architectural firms, even the organizers of last year's award ceremony began to seek me out. I politely declined all interviews, following Master Chen's advice. "Not yet," he said. "Let the doubt ferment. We need a bigger stage for the finale." I knew the Wang family was on edge. My silence only made them more panicked. They tried to quell the rumors by releasing PR articles, praising Wang Hao's diverse vision. But the more they tried to cover up, the more their awkwardness showed. They couldn't explain the inconsistency in the works. The seed of doubt had been planted. Now, it was just a matter of time before it sprouted and broke through the wall of lies they had built. The opportunity we were waiting for arrived. The Asian Architecture Symposium, the most prestigious annual event in the industry, was to be held in Shanghai in 2 months. And none other than Wang Hao, as the rising star of Chinese architecture, had been invited as the keynote speaker to present on the Prosperity Project and his architectural vision for the future. That was the stage we needed. A stage filled with top experts, international press, and the most influential figures in the industry. "This is it," Master Chen said, his eyes glinting with determination. "The truth spoken here will carry more weight than 1,000 court trials." We began to plan meticulously, as if designing a complex architectural structure. First, Master Chen, with his reputation, contacted the symposium organizers. He didn't mention Wang Hao at all. He simply requested a short presentation slot in the Promising Young Talents section for a former student of his, Li Wei, to share about the internationally acclaimed Library of Light project. The organizers, who were very curious about the name Li Wei, agreed immediately. They scheduled me to speak in the afternoon, right after Wang Hao's Q&A session. A perfect arrangement. Next, I began preparing my presentation. It wouldn't just be a presentation about the Library of Light. It would be a story, the story of my creative journey. I spent days organizing the scanned files from my old sketchbooks, creating a time-lapse video that showed the process of Bamboo Garden Serenity being formed from the very first strokes, from embryonic ideas, evolving through each stage until its completion. I didn't add any accusations. I simply presented a process. The truth would reveal itself. In the meantime, I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end stunned me. It was An Chi, the young architect who had been my assistant on the Bamboo Garden Serenity project, a talented and upright young woman. "Mr. Li," her voice trembled. I read the article. I know you were the one who designed Bamboo Garden Serenity. I'm so sorry for being silent." She told me that after I was fired, Wang Hao had tried to continue smaller projects based on my ideas but had consistently failed. He lacked the ability to solve complex technical problems or develop concepts. He had to hire another team to fix his mistakes, and the Prosperity Project was actually a patchwork product of many people's work. And Chi had quit a few months prior because she couldn't stand the dishonest work environment. "I kept something," she said. "It's a recording of the early-stage design meetings. Your voice is on it, presenting the core ideas of Bamboo Garden Serenity in detail, and Wang Hao's voice is just there, listening and nodding. I thought it might help you." Another crucial piece of the puzzle had appeared. I met with An Chi. She gave me a USB drive containing the audio files. "Good luck," she said. "Get justice for all the honest professionals out there." Everything was ready, the proof, the stage, and the support from those who believed in the truth. A week before the symposium, I received an email from an anonymous address. "Li Wei, I know what you're planning. If you know what's good for you, stop. You can't fight our family." No signature, but I knew it was from Wang Li. They were scared. Her threat only strengthened my resolve. The night before the symposium, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window in Master Chen's study, looking out at the quiet bamboo courtyard under the moonlight. I didn't feel hatred or a desire for revenge. I just felt a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow, I wouldn't go there to destroy anyone. I would go there to tell my story, to return the soul to my creations. This fight wasn't about Li Wei versus the Wang family. It was about truth versus lies, creativity versus theft. And I believe that, in the end, the truth would win. The auditorium of the Shanghai International Convention Center was packed. The stage lights were brilliant, the atmosphere formal. I sat in a seat near the back, hiding myself among hundreds of architects, journalists, and students. Master Chen sat beside me, quietly placing a hand on my shoulder in a silent reassurance. Wang Hao stepped up to the podium, dapper in a designer suit, his face glowing with self-satisfaction. He began his speech on the Prosperity Project. He projected glossy 3D renderings, used high-level architectural terms he had memorized, but his speech was disjointed and lifeless. I could see a few experts in the front rows frowning slightly. He was trying to recreate magic, but magic cannot be imitated. Finally, the Q&A session began. This was the moment. After a few polite questions from journalists, I stood up. All eyes turned to me, a stranger in the back of the hall. "Mr. Wang Hao," I said, my voice calm and clear, echoing through the microphone. "My name is Li Wei. I have a question about Bamboo Garden Serenity. Could you elaborate on the philosophical inspiration behind the use of negative space and the Wu Wei philosophy in the landscape design? Specifically, why did you choose the suspended beam structure to completely free up the ground floor space, instead of using a traditional column support system?" The entire hall fell silent. My question was too detailed, too specific. It was the question of an insider. Wang Hao froze on stage. He blinked, clearly taken aback. "Ah, well," he stammered. "That was an aesthetic decision, to create a sense of elegance for the building." He gave a generic answer, completely missing the point. That structural solution was to solve a technical problem, not just for aesthetics. I didn't let up. "And what about the concept of the water wall flowing along the central atrium? What was your intention in using it to regulate the microclimate and create natural sound?" Wang Hao started to sweat. He glanced towards the front row, where Wang Li was sitting, her face now deathly pale. I think we should focus on the main topic of today's symposium," he tried to evade. At that moment, Master Chen stood up. Everyone recognized him. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice was firm, "I believe all of us here are concerned with creative integrity. Perhaps, to answer Mr. Li Wei's questions, we should watch a short film about the formation process of Bamboo Garden Serenity." Before the organizers could react, the technician, a former student of Master Chen, played the video I had prepared on the large screen behind Wang Hao. The hall held its breath. The video began with the image of an old sketchbook, clearly dated 4 years prior. The first strokes appeared, quickly evolving into more detailed drawings. My thought process was vividly recreated, from the concept of negative space, the suspended beam solution, to the water wall. My voice from the audio recording played, explaining each idea in detail to another person, who only replied with "uh-huhs" and "okay." It was Wang Hao's voice. The video ended with a side-by-side comparison. On one side, my hand-drawn sketch. On the other, the completed Bamboo Garden Serenity. The resemblance was absolute. When the lights came back on, all eyes were on Wang Hao, who stood frozen on the stage, his face as gray as ash. No further accusation was needed. The evidence was overwhelming. The silence in the room was as heavy as lead. Then a journalist stood up. "Mr. Wang Hao, do you have any comment on this video?" A barrage of questions followed like a storm. Cameras flashed incessantly. Wang Hao mumbled incoherently before turning and fleeing backstage. Wang Li also shot up, trying to cover her face and escape the crowd. The biggest plagiarism scandal in the history of Chinese architecture had been exposed, not in a courtroom, but on the very stage meant to honor its talents. I stood there, in the eye of the storm, but my heart was as calm as an autumn lake. I hadn't shouted, hadn't accused. I had simply let the truth speak for itself. And the truth, in the end, had resonated louder than any accusation. The curtain had fallen. The media storm that followed the symposium was even bigger than I had imagined. Major newspapers ran front-page stories. The fall of a fake genius, plagiarism scandal shocks, the architectural world, Li Wei, the true architect behind Bamboo Garden Serenity. The Wangsheng company collapsed in a matter of days. Investors pulled out. Contracts were canceled, including the mega project Prosperity. They faced a series of lawsuits from clients and partners. The Wang family, from the pinnacle of fame, plunged straight into the abyss of disgrace and bankruptcy. I didn't gloat. I just felt a quiet sense of release. My war was over. A few weeks later, Wang Li came to Master Chen's house. She looked haggard, her former glamour gone. "Wei," she said, her eyes red. "I'm sorry. It was all my fault. I was too ambitious. My brother pushed me. Can you forgive me? Can we start over?" I looked at the woman I had once loved with all my being. Now, in my eyes, she was just a stranger. "Start over?" I asked calmly. "Start what over? Start planning to deceive me again? Or start over with throwing me out on the street when I'm no longer useful?" The coldness in my voice made her tremble. "Number, it's not like that." "Wang Li," I said, "there is nothing left for us to say. Forgiveness is not something you can demand. It's something one must earn through genuine repentance. But I don't see that in you. I only see regret for what you've lost. Goodbye." I turned and closed the door, leaving her to her own despair. It was the last time I ever saw her. I heard she later divorced and left Shanghai. As for Wang Hao, he completely vanished from the architectural world. My life turned a new page. My name became known around the world. Job offers and major projects from all over came pouring in, but I turned them all down. Instead, with Master Chen, I founded a small architectural studio, naming it Zhenjian True Architecture. We didn't take on massive projects, but focused on works that were meaningful to the community: schools, hospitals, cultural centers. 3 years later, I was standing on the rooftop of my latest project, an art center for disabled children, built on the expanded plot of the old Library of Light. The building was designed with gentle ramps, friendly materials, and spaces filled with light and color. From here, I could see the Shanghai skyline. Somewhere among those buildings was Bamboo Garden Serenity. It was still there, a beautiful structure, but now it bore a different name, my name. After the scandal, the original investor had sued and regained ownership, then publicly apologized and officially credited me as the author. It no longer caused me pain. It was just a part of the past, a costly lesson. It reminded me that a building can be stolen, but talent and integrity cannot. A small hand took mine. It was Enchi's daughter, who was attending an art class at the center. "Uncle Wei," she asked, "when I grow up, can I build beautiful houses like you?" I smiled, ruffling her hair. "Of course, sweetheart. Just as long as you always build them with your heart." I looked out at the city. The sun was rising, painting the Shanghai sky gold. I had walked through the longest, darkest night of my life, and now I was standing in the light of a new day, a dawn that I had built with my own 2 hands. Truth is like sunlight. It can dispel the darkness, but it can also be blinding. After the symposium, my life changed at a dizzying pace. From an anonymous, crushed architect, I suddenly became a phenomenon, a symbol of true talent triumphing over deceit. The name Li Wei was everywhere. Interview requests and calls from the largest real estate conglomerates in Asia flooded our small Zhenjiang studio. At first I felt vindicated, but soon I realized I was facing a new enemy, one far more subtle and dangerous than the Wang family: the temptation of fame itself. One afternoon, the chairman of the Emperor Group, one of the industry's giants, came to see me personally. He spread out before me the plans for a 120-story skyscraper in the heart of Shanghai's financial district. "The Emperor Tower," he said, his voice dripping with power. "We want it to be the new icon of Asia, and we want architect Li Wei to be the one to design it. Budget is not an issue." The design fee he offered was enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. It was every architect's dream, to have your name etched into a city's skyline, to create an immortal icon. I looked at their concept drawings, a cold block of glass and steel, arrogant and soulless. It represented everything I had come to despise. Architecture that flaunted power, treating people as mere numbers. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The image of the tower haunted me. A part of me, the primal part that still craved recognition, was screaming to take it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to prove my talent to the world, to build a monument to my victory. I sought out Master Chen, who was leisurely pruning his bonsai trees in the courtyard. I told him about the offer. He said nothing, just listened quietly. After I finished, he pointed to a small pine bonsai on the table. "Do you see this tree?" he asked. "People can bend it into strange, complex shapes to sell it for a high price. But if you keep bending it, it will break. Its true beauty lies not in the shape people impose on it, but in the life force within, in the fact that it remains a pine tree, however small." He turned to look at me, his gaze profound. "They are not coming to you for your design philosophy, Wei. They are coming for your name, for your story. They want to use you to put a golden veneer on a hollow structure. You fought so hard to escape one cage. Don't willingly walk into another, even if it is bigger and more magnificent. My master's words were like a splash of cold water, waking me up. I had almost fallen into the same trap as my tormentors, letting ambition and vanity obscure the path I had chosen. The next morning, I called the chairman of the Emperor Group. "Thank you for your offer," I said politely but firmly. "But my philosophy does not align with this project. I believe architecture is meant to serve people, not to flaunt wealth." After hanging up, I felt an immense sense of relief. I had passed the first test. I had proven, not to anyone else, but to myself, that Zhenjian was not just a name, it was a promise. A promise to pursue true architecture, even if that path wasn't illuminated by the glare of the spotlight. A year after the scandal, I received a letter from a law firm representing the new owners of Bamboo Garden Serenity. After the Wang family's bankruptcy, the project had been acquired by a cultural investment fund. They had completed the legal procedures to restore my name as the author on all official documents. And now, they wanted to invite me back to the site as a consultant for a small renovation project. The thought of returning to that place weighed heavily on me. It was where my most beautiful dream and my worst nightmare coexisted. Every corner, every glass wall was etched with the shadow of betrayal. I wanted to refuse, but Master Chen advised me to go. "You can't run from it forever, Wei," he said. "You must face your own ghosts to be truly free." I agreed. The day I returned, a light rain was falling over Shanghai. Bamboo Garden Serenity appeared before me, still beautiful in its quiet, transcendent way, as if no tragedy had ever occurred. I walked through the gate, feeling like a stranger returning to a home he had built himself. The representative of the investment fund was a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Lin, a person with a deep knowledge of art. She led me on a tour, talking about their plans to turn part of the building into a contemporary art exhibition space. I walked through the corridors, every detail of which I knew by heart. I touched the bamboo walls, feeling the warmth of the material. I stood by the water wall, listening to the trickling sound that I had calculated to create the most relaxing frequency. The building was still there, its soul was still there. It was not at fault. The fault lay with the people who had exploited it. "Architect Li," Mrs. Lin suddenly asked as we stood in the inner courtyard. "We've had a discussion. Some people think we should change the name of the building, to erase its tainted past. What are your thoughts?" Her question stopped me in my tracks. Change the name? Erase Bamboo Garden Serenity? The name I had cherished from the very beginning? To do so would mean that the deceit had won, that it had permanently stained my creation. I looked at the bamboo swaying gently in the rain, at the raindrops rolling off the leaves, and I suddenly realized, this building, just like me, had endured a storm. But it still stood, still retained its inherent beauty and peace. The past was a part of it, just as the past was a part of me. Erasing it was not the way to heal. Accepting it and moving forward was. "No, Mrs. Lin," I said, my voice certain. "Please don't change the name. This name is its soul. The past happened. We cannot change it. But we can give it a new meaning." "What do you mean?" she asked. "Instead of trying to hide it, let's tell its story honestly," I suggested. "At the entrance, let's place a small bronze plaque. On it, engrave the building's name, the architect's name, and a simple line. Truth, like beautiful architecture, endures. Let it become a lesson, a reminder for everyone." Mrs. Lin looked at me, her eyes filled with admiration. She nodded. "An excellent idea. We will do just that." That day, as I left Bamboo Garden Serenity, I no longer felt the heavy weight. I was no longer a ghost in my own house. I had confronted my past, reconciled with it, and given it its proper place. I had truly reclaimed my work, not on legal paper, but within my own soul. The reputation from the Library of Light and my story brought an unexpected mission to our Zhenjian studio. We received numerous collaboration offers from non-profit organizations and disadvantaged communities across the country. They didn't have much money, but they had faith. They believed we could bring them better living spaces. One of these projects touched my heart deeply. A small village in the mountains of Sichuan, which had just suffered a landslide that washed away its only school. The local government had set up temporary classrooms made of tin sheets, which were like ovens in the summer and freezers in the winter. They sent us a letter, not asking for money, but for a blueprint for the future for their children. The project budget was almost zero. This was a challenge greater than any skyscraper. How could we build a safe, sustainable, and inspiring school with the most limited resources? I decided this would not be my project alone. It had to be the community's project. I went to the village with An Chi, who had officially become my partner at Zhenjian, and we stayed there for a month. We didn't start by drawing, we started by listening. We talked to the teachers, the parents, and most importantly, the children. What kind of school did they want? They wanted a sunny reading corner, a playground with a view of the mountains, and walls they could decorate themselves. From those conversations, the design gradually took shape. We decided to use locally available materials: stones from the stream, pine wood from the village forest, and a forgotten traditional rammed earth construction technique. And Chi brilliantly calculated the structure to ensure earthquake resistance. The most wonderful part was the construction process. We didn't hire a construction crew from the city. We held workshops, teaching the villagers themselves the building techniques. The strong men handled the foundation and walls. The women wove bamboo mats for partitions. Even the children participated, painting pebbles to decorate the schoolyard. The school rose, not from concrete and steel, but from the sweat, effort, and love of an entire community. It didn't have modern equipment, but it had large windows that welcomed the mountain sunlight, a cozy little library, and a shady courtyard. On the opening day, the whole village celebrated. They no longer called me Architect Li, they called me Teacher Wei. Watching the children eagerly run into their new classrooms, seeing the radiant smiles on the faces of the villagers, I felt a deep happiness that no award could ever bring. Standing on a hill overlooking the small school nestled in the mountains, I finally understood my own definition of success. Success wasn't about building the tallest structures, but about building hope. It wasn't about leaving a personal mark, but about contributing to a better future for the community. Bamboo Garden Serenity may have been the masterpiece of my mind, but this school was the masterpiece of my heart. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Zhenjian Studio continued to grow, but we remained true to our mission, only accepting meaningful projects. I found joy in my work, in sincere professional relationships, and in the tranquility of Master Chen's garden. The past seemed to have receded, becoming an old story. Until one day, I received a small parcel in the mail with no return address. Inside was a letter from a law firm in a small wooden box. My heart suddenly clenched. The letter informed me that Wang Hao had passed away a month ago in a small northern city from liver disease complicated by alcoholism. He had lived his final years in obscurity and illness. Before he died, he had left a will, instructing his lawyer to send this box to me. I opened the wooden box, a complex emotion washing over me. Inside was not an apology, not a sign of repentance. There were two items. The first was a cheap replica of the Architect of the Year trophy, the kind sold in souvenir shops, its gold plating already peeling. The second was a notebook. My hands trembled as I opened it. On the first page, he had tried to write my name, Li Wei, in a shaky scrawl. The following pages were filled with drawings. But they were not architectural drawings. They were distorted, desperate images. He had tried to redraw Bamboo Garden Serenity from memory, but the lines were shaky, the proportions wrong. He had tried to sketch new ideas, but they were just soulless, repetitive geometric shapes. Scribbled between the drawings were frantic words: why, how, what's in his head. It was not the notebook of an architect. It was the notebook of a man tortured by his own incompetence. He had stolen the glory, but he had never found peace of mind. He had lived in my shadow, and in the end, had drowned in it. I felt no satisfaction, no joy. I only felt a profound sadness for a life destroyed by envy and deceit. He had had everything: money, family background, opportunities. But he craved the one thing he could neither buy nor steal: true talent. I took the box to Master Chen's garden. Under a newly planted young bamboo, I dug a small hole and buried the box. I didn't want to keep anything of his. The past needed to be buried, not with forgetfulness, but with silent forgiveness. Not forgiving him, but forgiving myself, to break free from the last invisible threads that still tied me to that tragedy. As I filled the hole with earth, a gentle breeze rustled the bamboo leaves. The sound was like a long sigh, a release. All grievances, all hatred, from this moment on, had truly turned to dust. 5 years after the curtain fell at the architecture symposium, I was standing at the podium of my old university, in the same lecture hall where Master Chen had taught me my first lessons. Today, I had been invited back as the keynote speaker for the architecture department's graduation ceremony. In the past 5 years, Zhenjian had become a respected name in the industry, not for monumental buildings, but for a steadfast philosophy. We had built more schools, libraries, and community centers in the places that needed them most. And Chi had become an outstanding architect, and our studio was now filled with young, like-minded people. I looked down at the young, eager faces below me. They were just like I had been years ago, full of ambition and dreams. What should I tell them? Recount the story of betrayal and my journey for justice? Number. That story was old. I began my speech, not with an image of bamboo garden serenity, but with a picture of the children in the Sichuan school laughing in the playground. I showed them images of elderly people reading in the Library of Light. I showed them pictures of disabled children confidently painting colorful pictures in the art center we had just completed. When I was sitting where you are now, I said, I thought the measure of an architect was the height of the buildings they built, the value of the contracts they signed, the number of awards they won. I was wrong. Years of practice have taught me one thing, I continued, my voice slow and deliberate. The true measure of an architectural space lies not in its magnificent appearance, but in the quality of life it brings to the people who inhabit it. It is not measured in square meters, but in smiles, in connections, in feelings of safety and healing. So, as you step out into the world, I look directly into their eyes. There will be many temptations, many pressures to build things that are taller, bigger, and more expensive. But I hope you will never forget the most important question: what do we build for, and for whom? Use your talent to create spaces with soul. Be architects who not only build houses, but build homes, build hope, and build a better society. That is the greatest legacy we can leave behind. When I finished my speech, the entire hall rose to its feet in applause. But my eyes searched for only one person. Master Chen, his hair now completely white, was sitting in the front row. He wasn't clapping. He just watched me quietly, a gentle smile on his lips. His eyes seemed to say, "Now, you are truly an architect." After the ceremony, I walked with him in the school grounds. The sun was setting, painting the Shanghai sky purple. I looked towards the distant skyscrapers. They were no longer symbols of fierce competition or past pain. To me, they were simply part of the city, a city where I had found my place, not by conquering it, but by building oases of peace and humanity within it. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time in many years, my heart was completely at peace. I had found the measure of my own space, and it was peaceful.